In mid-July 2026, a Russian camera filmed something over the front line in Ukraine that belongs in a science fiction film. A large Ukrainian bomber drone was flying toward the Russian positions, and slung beneath it, instead of a bomb, was a robot. A tracked, unmanned ground vehicle, packed with explosives, hanging in the air on its way to war. And here is the honest part, the part you will not hear in most coverage of this. We do not know what happened next. We do not know whether that robot reached its target, whether it detonated where it was supposed to, whether it was jammed or shot down, or simply failed. Ukraine has not identified the drone, the robot, or the unit that flew the mission. The footage came from the Russian side. But the outcome is not the story. The story is that it happened at all. Because in about 1 week of July 2026, Ukraine put armed ground robots into battle, by air and by sea, and in doing so, quietly attacked the single biggest weakness those robots have always had. Not their weapons, not their armor, their journey. If you have watched our episode on Ukraine's robot army, you already know the scale of what is crawling around that battlefield. The haulers, the casualty evacuation machines, the armed platforms. What that episode did not cover, because it had not happened yet, is the problem that has quietly limited every single one of them. And that problem is the last mile. Let me explain why the journey, and not the machine, is the hard part. Picture what an unmanned ground vehicle actually is. It is heavy. It is slow. It grinds forward at roughly the speed of a walking man, and often slower, over churned mud, shell craters, and shattered tree lines. It is loud enough to hear, and large enough to see, and every single meter of its journey to the front happens inside what soldiers on both sides now call the kill zone, the belt behind the contact line, many kilometers deep, saturated with surveillance drones, first-person view attack drones, mines, and artillery. Now notice the cruel irony buried in that. The kill zone is the entire reason these robots exist. It has become so lethal that sending a truck forward, or a line of soldiers with ammunition on their backs, has turned into a genuine gamble with lives. So Ukraine sends a machine instead. But the machine has to cross exactly the same deadly belt the humans were trying to avoid, and it crosses it slowly, visibly, and without the ability to take cover, sprint, or lie flat in a ditch. A large tracked vehicle crawling across open ground is very close to a perfect target for an FPV drone, and so a significant number of ground robots never arrive at all. They are hunted down somewhere in the middle of that belt, still fully loaded, having accomplished nothing. Others reach the position with a drained battery after hours of crawling, which means less time to actually work before they must turn back, assuming they can. That is the last mile. It is unglamorous. It rarely makes headlines, and it has been the invisible ceiling on robotic ground warfare since the day it started. You do not solve it by building a better robot. You solve it by finding a way to not make the journey. Which brings us to the 13th of July. On that day, Ukrainian operators from the 123rd Separate Territorial Defense Brigade, a unit commanded by Colonel Ole Makuka, with the mission coordinated directly by Major Dennis Hippik, who leads its 1st Unmanned Systems Battalion, sent an unmanned surface vessel out across the Black Sea toward the Kinburn Spit. The Kinburn Spit is a long, thin finger of sand and scrub in the Mykolaiv region, held by Russian forces. It is precisely the kind of place that has historically cost appalling numbers of lives to approach, because there is no cover on it, no concealed route in, and anyone crossing the water toward it is visible for a very long time. No Ukrainian soldier made that crossing. The sea drone carried a ground robot across the water and put it ashore on the occupied coast. From the released footage, analysts believe the machine was a Ukrainian-made ground vehicle called the Reese, built by a company called Robiniers, armed with a PKT machine gun. I want to be careful with that. The identification comes from watching video, not from an official statement. The brigade did not name the sea platform it used, has not described exactly what the robot did once it was on that beach, and has not detailed the result. What the brigade did say, on the record, is that the robotic complex was delivered to the enemy shore and employed to accomplish a combat task, and that this was, in their words, the first known combat mission of this format in the world. Look at what the sea route avoids. There are no minefields on open water. There are no trench lines, No dug-in firing positions, no tree lines full of drone teams. The robot does not crawl for hours through a hunting ground. It is carried quickly across a surface where nothing is buried and nobody is dug in, and it steps onto the objective with a full battery and a full belt of ammunition. Every disadvantage of the last mile simply disappears. Then, within roughly a week, they did the same thing through the air. The bomber drone with the explosive ground robot slung underneath it, flying toward the Russian positions. Air delivery is, if anything, the more radical of the two. A bomber drone crosses that entire lethal belt in minutes, at altitude, above the mines and above the FPV teams working at treetop height. What takes a tracked vehicle several hours of maximum exposure takes an aircraft a few minutes of relative safety. And the robot arrives fresh, at the objective, without having spent a single % of its battery or a single moment of its luck getting there. That is the breakthrough. Not a new weapon, a new way of getting an existing weapon to the only place it matters. And this is landing on a front line that is already, in places, being run by machines. In July 2026, Britain's Channel 4 News published a report from inside Ukraine's ground robot units, and one commander told them something that should stop you cold. Entire sections of the front line are now held by drones alone, not supported by drones, held by them. The tempo behind that statement is relentless. Ukrainian forces carried out more than 9,000 ground robot missions in March 2026 alone, and more than 24,500 across the first quarter of the year. The number of units equipped with ground robots grew from 67 in November 2025 to 167 by March 2026, more than doubling in 4 months. Delivery by air and sea is not a laboratory curiosity being tested at the margins. It is a solution, arriving into a system that is already running at enormous scale and straining against exactly this bottleneck. Now think about what routine robotic delivery would actually break, because it is bigger than logistics. For 3 years, defensive positions on this front have been built around one deep assumption, that an attack must physically travel toward you across the ground. That journey takes time. It can be seen by drones, slowed by mines, broken up by artillery, and hunted by FPVs. Nearly every defensive measure of this war, the minefields, the anti-drone netting, the layered surveillance, the kill zone itself, exists to punish that journey. Delivery removes the journey. An armed machine can now appear on a beach that has no road to it, or be set down near a tree line, without the slow approach that would normally warn a defender it was coming. The defenders of a coastal position now have to watch the water for ground threats. The defenders of an inland position have to consider that the aircraft overhead may not be carrying a bomb. It may be carrying something that will land and keep moving. And the honest limits, because a technology story without them is just advertising. Ground robots still need a stable control link, and electronic warfare still severs those links. They still need trained operators, and good operators take time to produce. They still need ground they can actually cross. They still break down in places nobody can safely reach. Mines and FPV drones still hunt them once they are down there. Delivery gets the machine to the fight. It does not make the fight safe. And both of these missions come wrapped in genuine uncertainty. In the amphibious operation, the sea platform was never officially identified, the exact objective was never specified, and the results were never detailed. In the air delivery, we do not know the drone, the robot, the unit, or whether any of it worked. What we know is that it was done, and that the enemy filmed it. I would argue that is enough, because in this war, the first time something is done is rarely the important moment. The important moment is when it becomes ordinary. Ukraine's first fiber-optic drone was a curiosity that could not be jammed. Now they are everywhere. The first naval drone strike was a shock. Now the Black Sea has been reshaped around them. The pattern repeats with almost boring reliability. An improvised first attempt, a lot of uncertainty about whether it even worked, and then, months later, an entire category of warfare that did not exist before. We are watching that pattern start again, this time with delivery. And every other army on Earth building ground robots, which is now most of them, has the identical wall waiting for it. The machine is useful. Getting it into position is slow, dangerous, and frequently fatal to the machine. Ukraine is solving that under fire at speed, and publishing the answer in the form of combat footage that every defense ministry on the planet is currently studying. That is the thing this war keeps proving. The individual systems are often not revolutionary at all. The bomber drone existed. The ground robot existed. The sea drone existed. What is revolutionary is combining them quickly, because the alternative is spending people you cannot replace, and then doing it again the following week, slightly better. So here is where this actually stands, without exaggeration. In 1 week of July 2026, Ukraine landed an armed robot on an occupied coast using a sea drone and carried an explosive robot into battle beneath an aircraft. One of those is described as a world first by the brigade that ran it. The other is confirmed only by the enemy's own camera, and its outcome is genuinely unknown. Neither mission, on its own, wins anything. Together, they mark the moment ground robots stopped being limited by their own slow, vulnerable crawl toward the battlefield, and started arriving the way ammunition and soldiers always have, carried. The machines are learning how to get themselves to the fight, and the front line is quietly being rebuilt around that fact. Thanks for watching. If you want to understand the systems quietly rewriting how this war, and the next one, will be fought, stay with us, because the future of war is being built right now, one improvised solution at a time.